Alberta politics has been quite heated over the last year, with calls for Premier Jason Kenney to resign and for Alberta to even separate. Today we're joined by veteran politician Paul Hinman. He was the first leader of the original Wildrose party and also served as the MLA for Cardston-Tabor-Warner from 2004 to 2008. Paul is currently the interim leader of the Wildrose Independence Party of Alberta. Paul, welcome to Bridge City News.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Hal.
First of all, tell us a bit about your party and why you feel that Alberta really needs a change in government.
Well, the NDP were a disaster and toxic for Alberta. The UCP have they've been traitors to us. That they haven't stood up and put Alberta's interests first. They've just basically been laid down to Ottawa. And we need a premier and a provincial government that actually understands the needs of the province of Alberta, our people, our industry, and it's just been a complete failure. We've gone from bad to worse. We have governments that are just spending is out of control, and people realize that we need a government that's actually going to protect their personal interests, their lives, their property, their freedoms, and this just isn't happening for Albertans, and we're really getting hurt bad by our government.
Now, a recent Angus Reid poll, Paul, says that among decided voters, 41% support the NDP, 30% for the UCP, and a surprising 20% for your party, for the Wildrose. Did the poll results maybe surprise you a little bit?
The reception and the growth of our party has been phenomenal. And yes, I guess it bumped a little bit higher than we expected. But the bottom line, Albertans are tired of picking the lesser of two evils, and they're quite excited and jumping towards the Wildrose Independence Party, and for good reason. We're there to put Albertans first, to protect their freedoms, their livelihood, their freedom of religion, and these other governments, just the personal and industrial attacks on Albertans is just unacceptable, and people are looking for a solution. And that's what the Wildrose Independence Party is that they're here to actually to serve the people and not have the people servants of the government.
Now, let's break down the numbers actually for just a moment when you do the math here. According to that poll, many conservative-minded voters are likely thinking, this is going to just be a repeat of the election in 2015, splitting the vote on the right and the NDP going right up the middle and winning. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I would say it's not about splitting the vote. It's about not wasting your vote. And why would any Albertan want to waste their vote again on the UCP and I just want to say their betrayal of Albertans. And we absolutely know that the NDP was disastrous, the debt that they unloaded to us. They never fixed anything except for they put forward their personal agendas to the detriment of Alberta. I mean, look what they did to our oil and gas industry, and it's continued to be decimated. This idea of a social license. We have two governments that are bent on following Ottawa's divisive rules. They're rigged against Albertans, and they're not there for us. And so rather than, like I say, wasting a vote on the NDP or the UCP, people can actually vote for a party that they believe in, that know that's going to be there for Albertans and for freedom and for families and just the future for Alberta. These other parties have no interest in Alberta's future.
It appears as though your party, the Wildrose Independence Party, is gaining momentum here in Alberta. How many members do you have in your party right now?
Well, we're approaching 8,000 paid members. We're quite excited with the activity. And again, each week, the governments continue to hurt us. And like with Bill C-10 being passed on censorship, every time the governments do things, we see a boost. The lockdowns have been detrimental when they arrest pastors, when they shut down businesses. People are realizing that we've got to go somewhere else. And we just keep seeing the donations and the memberships ticking up week after week.
How many local constituency associations do you have so far?
Well, there's 87 in Alberta, and we have 50 of them, give or take a few, that are up and running, and we'll continue to bring them online as quick as we can, but it takes a little bit of work with COVID and not being able to meet with people. But we're like I say, we're approaching 50 if we haven't hit 50 this week. And we have a pipeline of CA people that are wanting to get up and running, and it's just been enjoyable to work with the different groups that are excited to be part of this movement.
Now, Paul, realistically, will you have a shot and having a candidate in each Alberta riding in 2023?
I'm very confident we will. You know, back in 2008, we were able to fill the slate. 2004, we filled the slate. And we think there's nothing more important than for every Albertan to be able to vote for something they believe in. And it's just that there's people stepping forward, there's great interest, and I'm very confident that we will have a full slate across all 87 constituencies here in Alberta.
Now, you believe that a sovereign Alberta is the only solution. How would you go about deciding this if you won the election?
Well, it's an excellent question. And, you know, when anybody ever wants to be independent and out on their own, there's steps that they need to take to do that. And to be an independent country is no different. The top two things that we would need to do is be first to create our own police force and judiciary system, that we'd have to, you know, have a patch over and to take control from the RCMP here for a provincial police force, one that has elected civilian oversight. Number two, we need to start collecting all of the taxes here in Alberta by Albertans for Albertans, and not sending our hard-earned dollars down to Ottawa and then putting our hand out asking even for lunch money to come back. It's been a complete black hole. We send $50 billion down to Ottawa and then we beg for money to come back, and that's just not acceptable anymore. You know, we'd create our own Alberta pension plan so people can have confidence in the future. We'd have our own employment insurance policy here, so that Albertans are supporting Albertans and not the rest of the country with their lax employment rules compared to ours. We'd actually govern ourselves with our own environmental legislation, and we'd actually, you know, continue to be able to promote Alberta industry, especially our oil and gas, which is just world renowned. I mean, we've set so many precedents when it comes to the good environmental regulations. Just all of those things have been cared for very carefully, and we're an example to the world, and the world needs more Alberta oil, not less, and we want to preserve that industry here. We'll protect it. We'll also look after our immigration policy, all of those things that will take those steps to exercise our full autonomy, so Albertans can have great confidence and say, oh wow, this really is working, this is wonderful, and have confidence to be able to then themselves voting in a referendum on sovereignty and not having politicians decide for them.
Now, Paul, you mentioned the energy sector for just a moment there, oil and gas sector. How would you actually get our products to Tidewater? That's a big concern, even with Premier Kenney discussing that.
Well, that's an excellent question. And as a member of Canada, we've seen very much that they're able to shut us down. That's one of the benefits of being a sovereign nation. International law does not allow countries to block other countries from exporting and getting their produce or bringing resources in from Tidewater. We'd actually be in a much better position. But not only that, you know, the Eagle Spirit Energy Corridor, those Indigenous people are very anxious and wanting to deal and to get a corridor going through northern BC. And I just think that the opportunity would be exciting as a Wildrose independent government to be able to move forward on these issues and not be blocked anymore by our current federal government, who says we're not allowed to have that right, even though the Constitution says we have it. They have not allowed us to exercise that right here in Alberta. So it would be an actual plus, not a negative.
Have you had a chance to chat with Jay Hill, the interim leader of the Maverick Party, who wants to see the Western provinces join forces and separate?
Yes, and Jay, I haven't spoken to him recently, but he's always said, you know, we need to try once more and to send MPs to vote no. I mean, the great benefit of the Maverick Party is bringing Western Canada together, and that's what we need to do. There's nothing more powerful than you know, if Northern BC and Alberta and Saskatchewan were to come together and want to form a Western Canada that would be strong and free. That would be exciting, but we have to do it on the provincial levels, and so we just want to lead here with Alberta and then allow, you know, BC and Saskatchewan, maybe Manitoba wants to join us, certainly the territories. I just think it's an exciting opportunity to have a strong and free country, as opposed to one that's got the ball and shackles of Ottawa telling us what we can and can't do.
So, Paul, what are your thoughts on equalization payments? Has Alberta been giving too much, as Premier Kenney suggested?
Well, you know, People always talk about equalization payments. The problem is that we pay too many taxes. Equalization is just a small part of it. And I mean, the amount of money that we send in taxes versus what we're represented and allowed to participate in, it's laughable. And so it's a lot more than just equalization. It's the taxation of Albertans. It's the regulations of Alberta industries. It's the shutting down of our pipelines and our opportunities to export our products. I mean, it's the attack on our beef industry and agriculture. All of those things are attacks from Ottawa, and equalization, that's what you want to say, the flavor that people like to talk about, but it's a lot bigger problem than just equalization.
Now, one of the complaints against the UCP is how it handled the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the issues you're concerned about is the extent of the restrictions, killing a lot of the small businesses and limiting religious freedom. Can you explain some of your concerns about the restrictions?
Absolutely. This is decimated so many lives. This government, who's supposed to be looking after the interest of the individuals and families and businesses, has only been interested in looking after their faulty healthcare system. Number one, they never ever compared and showed that, gosh, every year in the flu season our ICUs are maxed out. They created all this fear mongering like it was something new and unusual. And they didn't even allow for treatment. They canceled their own uh, tests, I guess, if you want to say, like on ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine last July. They didn't pursue any answers. They just fell lock and step with the World Health Organization, which we know has not been in the best interest of people outside of China. And again, the way this government is picking and choose, what industries can be open. It's okay for hundreds and thousands of people to go to Costco and to Walmart, but we can't have 200 people attend a church. I mean, there was never anything scientific about this. This was just attack on people's individuals' business, their lives, their families, scaring children and saying they can't go to school, when there's overwhelming evidence that COVID was not a problem for children. It was a problem for seniors. It was a problem for seniors with preconditions. And yet they've blown this totally out of proportion. They always say follow the science when they themselves just go back and forth on it. And again, what's my biggest concern historically, the flu shot has been for seniors, and we'd allow them to pick and choose. And for Premier Kenney to say that we want 70% vaccination from those 12 years of age and up, this vaccine has not gone through the proper what would I say, the proper steps for safety that we do. This is being put out under the Emergency Act, and the efficacy and the safety of this shot has not been determined. But it is interesting that the information is finally coming out, and the WHO, just came out this week on Monday and says, what, we really shouldn't be giving this shot to children. This mRNA is scary stuff. It's unknown, it's experimental, and it's just unbelievable that we've set up a lottery here in the province encouraging people to be participating in this, and there's been no informed consent.
Paul, we only have a few moments left here. How would a Wildrose government have handled the COVID-19 pandemic differently?
Well, excellent question. And first of all, we should be creating a more robust healthcare system. I mean, we had the butter dome that was never used. There's no reason why we didn't increase, respiratory therapists and other things to prepare for it, especially for the second wave. But the most important thing is the government should be collecting all of the information out there and the best practices, and allowing doctors to pursue what they think is the right thing. This one thought, central government censored decisions. I mean, I'm not sure if you heard about Dr. Francis Christian, who just got fired at the University of Saskatchewan because he was speaking out about vaccinating children. I mean, this is totalitarian, authoritarian thuggery, where academia and individuals' lives are being threatened if you don't go along with the government's dictates. And it's just unbelievable to me, the situation that we're in. And what government's job is to collect that information, disseminate it, and to allow professionals, whether it's doctors or nurses or whatever, to use their best judgment and their years of practice to actually be treating individuals. And this idea of the dog chasing its tail with those PCR tests, which we know had an inflated number of false positives to scare people. Everything the government did was about fear mongering and taking away people's hopes, scaring our children, saying, don't go visit your grandparents, you might be the one who kills them. Everything was backwards. When you listen to someone like Lieutenant Colonel David Redmond, who specializes and was an actual emergency act specialist, we've done everything wrong. You don't turn over the province and the economy to a doctor to shut everything down. And again, they didn't treat people as individuals. They just were treating numbers. All we ever heard time and time again was we need to protect our healthcare system, but they never increased the capacity, the robustness. We've been, our healthcare system has been overrun for 20 years. And yet, do we have more hospitals, more nurses? Do we have more facilities and treatments? No, we don't. And we spent billions of dollars and still have nothing to show for it. And it's the same with our senior care facilities. We should have been increasing those senior care facilities and creating isolation places. So many things that should have been done that weren't. And this government has no interest in Albertans or in their businesses. They only have interest in their healthcare system. And I want to say just a facade of virtue signaling, which has not been in the interest of Albertans.
Paul Hinman is the interim leader of the Wildrose Independence Party of Alberta. Paul, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to it again.